I'm Susan Strate. I'm from the UMass Donahue Institute. As I mentioned, we've been working closely with the Massachusetts Secretary of the Commonwealth's office. It's nice to see some of the faces that I associate with the LUCA project. Michelle, Todd, working a little bit with you all on that. So just a reminder of why we're all here today and why we care about this. The 2020 census is about data, it's about money, it's about power. So data for accurate planning, which is something that I know all of you in this room care about. The decennial count sets the base for the next 10 years. So all of the ACS data, all of the annual estimates, they're all set with this decennial base count. They're all controlled to this base. It's very important that we get this right. Money, that's $16 billion in federal funds to Massachusetts. That was in FY15. And I know before I worked in demographics, I worked in anti-poverty, so I know firsthand how important it is to get the CDBG funding into your programs, into your schools, the HUD funding. A lot of these federal funds are based on population formulas. And of course, power, the number of representatives that Massachusetts gets to send to Washington, D.C., which speaking personally, now more than ever, I'd really like to see a strong Massachusetts delegation and to keep that power. And as a reminder, we did lose one seat in 2010 based on a diminishing population compared to areas in the southern and western U.S. So my project's been working since about 2017 to support an accurate census count in 2020. We did some group quarters electronic review testing with the Census Bureau. Massachusetts was the only state to volunteer for that test. A geographic support services initiative where we worked with MassGIS to turn in lat-long coordinates for over 2 million addresses, and the Census Bureau accepted about 1 million of our coordinates as better than the ones they had on file. LUCA, we're just wrapping up LUCA, really. We worked on a statewide submission. We put in over 100,000 addresses statewide, just in a statewide single submission, which Census possibly missed. We couldn't find them in their master address file. And in addition, a number of cities and towns, in fact, very many submitted their own LUCA submissions on top of that. Just want to kind of go back. There were just a couple of other things coming up. We worked on early non-response follow-up, block recommendations, letting the Census Bureau know where we think they need to do early follow-up for non-responders, specifically for college students who live off campus, who they may have left Amherst by July or by June when these operations are still going. So we worked with digitizing PVPA bus maps, we looked at college campus maps, we put it all together and we recommended, I think, like 1,600 blocks for early non-response follow-up statewide. Next, we'll be working on new construction. So those of you who work in city and town planning offices, you might hear from us fairly soon. Count review program, another address review. And finally, post-census, we do the count question resolution. So all of these projects kind of happening in the background and getting to the first phase of Census 2020, the order of operations, which is establishing where to count. Because if the Census Bureau doesn't have your address, you're not going to receive a form. So that was step one. We're working on it, we've done a lot. But now the hard part, I think, motivating people to respond. And we're going to hear from somebody from the Massachusetts Attorney General's office who will talk to you about the status of the citizenship question. The census is always challenging. This time around, it's probably more challenging than we've ever seen because of the addition of this 11th question. Our role at the UMass Donahue Institute is not to go out and speak to people. Our role is to provide data support to the complete count committees that will be starting up around the state. And we're thinking in terms of the low response score that can be assigned to specific block groups or tracts or specific neighborhoods. So where do you need to conduct your outreach? And who are the populations that may need some special messaging or special outreach to make sure that they fill in their forms? So the Census Bureau has done some research on this. Actually, they developed they hosted a worldwide competition, which was kind of neat. They took the Census 2010 mail response rates and put that together with demographic data at the block group level, and challenged research groups to come up with basically the best statistical formula to help predict where the hard to count populations are going to be based on their demographic data. And the winner of that competition came up with this low response score. Yes?
And that's just for male respondents, not
That's just for male response. So, which is a good point, because there are two major unknowns in Census 2020 that this score will not predict, which is how do people feel about internet response? So you can see in their testing, like the 65 plus, that brought your low response score down. That is to say that if you were 65 or over, there was a pretty good chance that you were going to respond to the census. But perhaps this time not so, right? If your first encounter is with a, like, hey, here's your ID number, log online and fill out your form. So that's an excellent point. This is based on what we knew, or what we knew in 2010, and the way that the 2010 census was conducted. But then some other variables we believe will stand true today. So the variables that increase your low response score, having a large number of people in your household, that could be students sharing an apartment, it could be large families, it could be families doubled up, renters versus owners, high vacant units, the presence of people ages 18 through 24, very highly mobile population, single mothers, Hispanic, below poverty level, so on and so forth. So these are kind of the indicators, these are the demographics that would make a population hard to count. So as a complete count committee, it's on you to think about, how do I, in my role, intersect with some of these groups? And how can I get the messaging out? You know, if you're with a CAP agency, maybe you have access to more single mothers. If you're at the Center for New Americans, you have limited English clientele, so on and so forth. So you kind of think about who are the hard to count, and then how does that intersect with your lives and your work? Oh, let's see, that's not working. Let's try that. So all of the demographic variables that play into this low response score are collected by the Census Bureau, and they're also hosted online through a product that they call the Planning Database. So it's like this humongous spreadsheet with about, what did we say, Ken, like 200 variables, or like?
We're coming up on like 250.
250 variables that you could look at by the block group level or at the tract level, so it's a lot. They try to make it easy by putting it up on what they call the Response Outreach Area Mapper, which I'm going to call Rome, or they call Rome. So they do have this online interface, and I'm going to give a demonstration of that at the end of this slideshow. But basically, you could enter like Holyoke, Mass. It would zoom into Holyoke, Mass. If you hover over this block, or this block group, it will you'll see that those darker areas have got a higher low response score, meaning these are harder to count populations somewhere in this area. And if you hover over that block, you'll get a pop-up of all of the variables associated. with the LRS that they've decided to load into this map. And I will show you the examples here.
Susan, I have a quick question
Yeah.
about that. So does that use the formula that you were mentioning earlier?
Yes.
So that doesn't necessarily take into account identifying like more elderly population?
No, it does not. And it doesn't indicate, it doesn't take into account, again, this, the new citizenship question,
Yeah.
question 11, I'll call it. That wasn't, nobody knew that was going to come up until the 11th hour, right? That wasn't really part of the original plan. The census kind of rolls out these products on like a 10-year schedule. So this is relatively very late in the day to have a pop-up question like that. In fact, it wasn't tested in the Providence, Rhode Island end-to-end test, so it's a problem. So no, that's not on this database.
Okay.
But
So, yeah,
we
so
may
those are
have
just
solutions.
additional considerations for us to keep in mind. Great.
So here's what will pop up for this block. So you can see what the median income is, the pop under 5, percent of pop 18 through 24, 65 and over, below poverty level. So, you know, there's a huge poverty percentage in that test block group. And so on and so forth. Gets into race, it keeps going. Limited English proficiency, and also the language spoken in that tract. So no Russian, no Chinese, no Korean, no Vietnamese, so on and so forth until you get to the next slide. Oh, what was it? Was it Spanish? I missed it.
Yeah.
Sure.
Spanish, yeah, up on top there. And so on and so forth. So that's what you get with the Rome database interface, and again, I'll give you a live demo of that if I can get that to work. So before I do that, I just wanted to talk about the PVPC region in general. So the demographics that we know about influencing a hard-to-count population here include high-density neighborhoods with residents who speak English less than very well. And of course, this varies community to community, but this is just kind of a snapshot of your whole region. Student populations with temporary addresses, households with single parents and living below the poverty line. The Pioneer Valley's larger municipalities represent specific challenges, so Springfield in its North End and Mason Square areas, and Holyoke's Churchill and South Holyoke areas, high rental rates among populations, and where 1 in 5 speak English less than very well. And I put around a handout. You can kind of look at some of the statistics. There's also a map of hard-to-count areas. And then, of course, the student population all over the valley. So this might be better looked at on the handout, but you can kind of see in different areas it's a different type of concern, but there are concerns in all areas. So in some cases it's the high renters, it's the high students, and some it's the language issues. So when we think about how you're going to split your regional complete count committee up into groups, you probably want to have focus groups on some of these specific concerns. And then we have a slide for Amherst, Northampton, Agawam, West Springfield, Ludlow, so on and so forth. So again, kind of different concerns in different areas, but all needing attention. I was going to poke around the Rome with you, and then I was going to talk about the things that I don't like about the Rome. Specifically, with the Rome database, I can't click like town by town. And I'm thinking that a lot of you, if you work for the town of Amherst, if you work for the city of Holyoke, you may only really want to be pulling and looking at data for that town. Not to exclude the value of this regional committee. Maybe you don't want to pull just by town, but so what we want to do is take the planning database and kind of build our own kind of customized web interface. And by we, I mean Ken, sitting in the corner there, who's working on it now. So, and this would let you kind of instead choose a, oops.
When you're ready, Jamie can switch.
Okay, cool. So this would instead let you kind of filter for one town at a time. So you could choose just Holyoke. The idea, again, is, you know, you could display low response score, but you could also pick a different variable, such as limited English proficiency, if that was the only variable you wanted to look at that time. Maybe that's your subcommittee. Or average persons per household. So trying to let you kind of look at one layer at a time, if you should so choose. Here's the Springfield low response score. You can see some very dense areas. We also thought what we would like to do, which Rome kind of does, but we can customize this, I think, better. Overlay some point layers. So when we're talking about getting to community computer banks or other kind of central areas where people can come together or work in groups. So in this example, we geocoded a library layer, which is those black icons, people reading books, and then we have some schools too. So depending on, and anything you can think of as a complete count committee, we can geocode and throw up as a layer. If you tell us, like, actually what we really need are the soup kitchens on the map, and here's the list, here are the addresses, we can, you know, throw that up. Right, Ken?
Yes.
Yes.
Sounds clear.
And if we can't do it online, we can at least do it on our GIS copy and generate maps just to send out to you in PDF form if that's helpful. So that's where we're headed for that kind of data support that we were thinking about. It'll take us like a month or two to get this going, I think. But we'll try to get the word around. We're up on that. And so I wanted to try it again for the demo. So I'm gonna do that.
So Susan, will that be available to the public once it's complete?
Yeah, once we complete that, we will most likely host it on the Secretary of the Commonwealth's website, but with links from either place. So if you get to it from our website or from theirs, but we'll send it out. And again, like the Rome database is up now. That's hosted at the U.S. Census Bureau site. You can literally Google Rome, you know, Census 2020 Rome, and you'll get to it. And it's definitely usable. There are just some things that we don't love about it. So here, okay, so, whoops, get back to this. Am I supposed to be on it now? Because it's hyperlinked to this picture. So I'm trying to get onto the website. No, actually, just go online and we'll just Google Rome. We'll see if that, just Google stuff.
Maybe we could just spend a couple minutes on that and then move on to the next agenda item, and we can have more conversation about this later too. It's okay.
No, I didn't want the PDF. Just maps. Okay. So
Try searching Rome without the word interface. It'll be the
Okay.
first one. I think. Yep, yeah.
Here we go. All right, we're on the Rome website. Separate window. Okay, so it's like in our GIS thing. So you can try to zoom in if you want to, or you can just kind of type something in. I'll type in Holyoke, Mass. Put in a comma. one. So here we see Holyoke here. And again, as I kind of showed in the slide, you can kind of, if you press on any of these hard to count areas, and the row interface is by tract, not by block group, you can kind of start to see the components behind it. So that's useful. You can also, you can add different layers. So if you care about the imagery behind it to show the buildings, or you can turn on your street names, where that is. Yeah, it's slowly loading, but you can start to see a highway kind of start to appear there in the background. If you zoom in, maybe you can see street names a little bit better. You can kind of see that. I could do better from there. You can also add layers. So, this one? Yeah. So there are a lot of layers that they've already loaded up here. So thinking about, so they have libraries, for example. Type in search library and see what Esri has loaded up. Public libraries. So I'm going to add that layer here. And then somewhere they should be appearing.
I hate to say it, but I think that was just for New York State.
Oh, it was?
It
Huh.
was a user set.
So just in the, looking at time,
Yeah.
we'll send this out to everybody so they can play around
Yeah,
with
you
it.
can play around with it. It's a little pokey. I'm a little pokey on it, but it is a little pokey anyway.
Yeah.
You can download the materials, but we want to do a better version, so I'm going to end there.
Okay, great.
Thanks.
Thank you,
Susan.
Susan.